Hi, I'm Barbara Brimkunis, and this is your Exeter History Minute. If you're considering taking a road trip this summer, here's a cautionary tale from Exeter. Maybe it was because they were young and in love. In June of 1896, newlyweds Albert and Lucy Tyler decided to take a trip west to California. Instead of just hopping on a train, they purchased a pneumatic runabout wagon, which was a lightweight carriage favored by fire chiefs and doctors because it could be pulled by a single horse and could be hitched up quickly. It wasn't really the first choice for a grueling cross-country trip, though. The air-filled tires were nice for shock absorption, but it didn't have much room for cargo, and they had to bring a tent and camping supplies. They got as far as Des Moines, Iowa, with just one horse, who was named Peter, in case you're interested. And there they purchased a second horse, whose name we don't know, to make the longest and most difficult part of the trip across what was then called the Great American Desert. This couldn't have been easy. Roads were poor, water was in short supply, and the runabout was hardly up to the task. Still, after 180 days on the road, Lucy, Albert, Peter, and the horse with no name made it to Los Angeles in December. And then they really weren't sure what to do. Should they stay in California or head home? Coincidentally, while they'd been on the road, gold was discovered in the Klondike, so they decided to head north in search of new adventures. They got as far as Seattle when the money ran out. They found themselves living in a tent on the corner of 2nd Avenue and Virginia Street. All around them, well-supplied adventurers were heading north to the gold fields, but they were out of resources, including the runabout and the horses that they must have sold. Sometime in the fall of 1897, they hatched a plan to return to New Hampshire on the cheap. Albert purchased a wooden shipping box, the kind used to ship an upright piano. So picture a box about 5 feet tall, 6 feet long, and 3 feet wide. Into this they crammed supplies: apples, figs, crackers, bread, onions, and water. I would have left the onions at home, but that's just me. The plan was to ship themselves home in the box. They thought that once on the train they could climb out of the box and move around the rail car. However, once they packed themselves inside, the freight wagon delivered them to the depot after the train left, and the box was moved to a storage warehouse, where the workmen heard noise and voices coming from inside. The couple was discovered, the plan revealed. Since they didn't actually make it onto the train, they hadn't broken any laws. The box was shipped east without them, and they followed along a few weeks later, arriving in late November, early December. A year and a half after they'd started the trip. Now, perhaps to prevent others from trying this, the railroad sold the story to the Boston newspapers. When the couple arrived in Exeter, they had become a media sensation. They tried to deny the story, but it was too late. Their notoriety preceded them. The last thing we hear about the couple, they've retreated to Lucy's family farm in Kingston. Lesson learned, that's the end of the Exeter part of the story. But stick around if you want to hear more, because the story gets much weirder. For more Exeter history, check us out at www.exeterhistory.org. Ready? I'm going to do this quickly because it's quite a ride. None of this story was told in Exeter. Albert Tyler's family in town never breathed a word of this, their most eccentric member's later life. Albert and Lucy moved to Haverhill, where Albert became a traveling salesman. Sometime around 1906, he disappeared with all of their money, and Lucy wasn't able to track him down. Until 1911, when she discovered that he'd married a woman named Susan from Buffalo, and they'd settled in Pittsfield, Massachusetts in the Berkshires. Albert and Susan had 3 children, one of them named Lucy. There he'd become something of an early 20th century hippie, following a vegetarian diet and espousing simple living. A bit of a religious zealot, he'd adopted the name Oh Be Joyful and was quite the town character. Just like the crazy road trip he took in the 1890s, Tyler's cover was broken when the newspaper began publicizing his story. Lucy, remember Lucy? She read it while still living in Haverhill. She traveled to Pittsfield, where she filed for divorce on the grounds of bigamy and demanded he repay her the money he stole. Susan, the other wife, was horrified to discover the deception. She hastily made her way back to Buffalo. Tyler was forced to sell his small farm to pay Lucy, who got her divorce. He remained in Pittsfield and became something of a Berkshire legend for the remainder of his life. He lived on the edge of economic stability, selling produce during the harvest months and picking up work during old home days as a musician. He once delivered an impromptu speech titled, "Are Women Handsomer Than Men?" after one performance. O.B. Joyful Tyler died in 1961 at the age of 89.